Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to A2I Dyslexia Live Show. We'd just like to welcome everyone around the world, no matter where you're watching from today. We want to say you're welcome to A2I Dyslexia Live Show. Today's topic is about, it's really about a manager's perspective of supporting a dyslexic person in the workplace. We'd like you to share. We'd like you to comment. We'd like you to, someone said to me, Lisa, you never mentioned the subscribe button. Please do subscribe, because we'll be doing these shows every Mondays at 7 p.m. UK time. I'd like to welcome the amazing Simon Phillips, who works for an organization called Quaker Social Action, and also he's a secretary of Quaker Housing Trust. Simon's got over 20 years experience in working with or teaching people with English as a foreign language, and also as a teacher with literacy. But before I actually go on, I want to introduce myself, because there are some new people that watch this show. My name's Elizabeth Techi, and I'm the founder of A2I Dyslexia. And my reasons for setting up this organization is exactly what we're going to be talking about today, to be honest with you. Not getting enough support in the workplace as a dyslexic, or in some cases where I've not spoken about dyslexia, so I never got the help I needed. So I really want to welcome Simon Phillips. Simon, I just want to come over to you now and get you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and why it's really important to support the individual persons or people in the workplace with 1, dyslexia, and 2, specific learning difficulties. So over to you now. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's really nice to be invited to speak on here. It's very privileged. I work at the moment for Quaker Social Action, and I run a project called Made of Money, which is a community education project. And it supports people with their financial well-being, money management, and things like that. Prior to that, I worked for an organisation called St Mungo's for about 15 years, and I was a literacy tutor there. So I was teaching English as a second language, but also literacy as well. And prior to that, I've done like English teaching in Spain, but also in this country. I think it was doing those jobs where I came across, especially when I started working in the homeless sector, a lot of people who had dyslexia. And I sort of recognized it because in my own family, my brother, who's me, he's dyslexic.
Okay.
And it was, although, you know, his generation, it wasn't really picked up when he was, and nobody at his school even recognized it. And I remember when he was about sort of 12, 13, so I would have been about 6 or 7, I could read and write better than he could. And I think that, you know, I can't imagine how that must have felt for him. You know, as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy, to have your younger brother who's only 6 or 7. And thinking back now, a lot of the times when we used to play darts and things like that, he would get me to do all the scores. He'd get me to write the scores down and do everything. So he was sort of, you know, I didn't realize quite why he was doing it. I was too young, and so as I got older and you know, he finally got tested when he went to university. He now has 2 degrees and is a teacher, by the way. So,
oh, that's awesome. That's amazing.
No way has it held him back, and he's an exceptional artist as well. Does ceramics and pottery. So right from that age, and then when I found out he was dyslexic, and then I became a literacy tutor. And so working at St Mungo's, and I realised that there were just so many people who were in that position, who had problems with their reading and writing. And the more I found out about how dyslexia manifests itself and the sort of signs to look out for, the more I realised that a lot of these people had dyslexia, this position, through no fault of their own at all, you know. So that sort of led me to develop a bit of an interest and sort of find out more about that. So I did some training and some courses to find out how I could support people and what people need to do. Although I'm not a trained dyslexia tutor, so my expertise only goes to a certain level.
Of course, and you don't necessarily have to be a dyslexia specialist teacher to be able to support a dyslexic, and you're a clear example of that. Yeah.
No, I think it's more about awareness. And certainly, you know, as a manager, and when I've been supporting people, that have had dyslexia. It's not. I think the key thing that I always look at it, rather than a difficulty, I see it as a learning difference. It's just a way. It's a different way of doing things, and it's a different way of processing information. To manifest itself through reading and writing in English. As we were talking earlier, in different languages, it manifests itself in different ways in different countries.
Different ways, absolutely.
Certainly through English, it tends to be around that reading and writing and the processing, the organising kind of things.
Yeah, because I mean, just before we came on the show, you gave me a really good example as to how some countries may not even recognize dyslexia because the English language have got different ways of explaining certain things. And of course, certain countries, one word would just be one word for an item or whatever it might be, which was a really interesting thing to say. I mean, I've heard people say in certain countries like China, for example, there's no dyslexia. People don't have dyslexia. I don't know to what limit. If that's true, I don't know. I'm not a specialist. And I've kind of tried to look for some information, and I've not managed to find any yet. So perhaps there isn't any dyslexia.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying to you, but I think it's about it's how it manifests itself, and I think it's probably you probably see it in different ways. If we accept that it's about processing, what happens in English is you've got those where you've got one sound. You've got like many different ways of spelling that one sound. Even a sound like k can be C, CK, K. You know, you've got 3 different ways of spelling that one sound. Into vowel sounds, it can get even more complicated. But something like Spanish, every sound has 1 letter, and that's it.
Right.
It's much easier to spell, and so it's much easier to understand the language. So it probably comes out in Spanish, and Spanish people who are dyslexic, it might be more to do with their ability to organize or to remember things. There might be other things that they you know, they're more creative. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so amazing to kind of have that explanation. So, Simon, I know you supported certain colleagues at your workplace, and without your help and support, that particular colleague would never have really excelled in her career path. And she actually sings praises of you and how amazing. I think she calls you her guardian angel.
As well.
She actually calls you her guardian angel. If I hadn't met Simon, I don't know where I would be right now. And I think it's so amazing and very rewarding to have someone who you work with to kind of look at a manager who didn't discriminate in any shape or form, but who had the understanding to support the individual in the workplace to unlock her full potential. And that's why we've put this title of this show, Dyslexia, I'm a Manager, How Can I Support You? So my first question will be, you know, I mean, basically I've got, please tell me how you supported one of your employees to become very confident worker and successful in their chosen career. I mean, what are some of the tips that you use to support this individual? And the question pops up as well. So I think it's more about confidence, isn't it? And be able to reassure that particular employee that it's okay if you learn differently, but I'm able to support you in that area. So give me an example of how you did that for some of your colleagues that you've worked with in the past.
You hit the word you used earlier on there, Elizabeth, individual. I think that's how I look at it. And I think, you know, probably any manager would say, you know, you need to look at your team as a group of individuals as well as a team. And see where they are. And I think that was certainly how I worked with that person. We call her Maria. So it's about getting to know the person, talking to them. I suppose I was sort of lucky in some sense, but I suppose she felt confident enough to be able to tell me that she was dyslexic. I had the experience of you know, working for many years in as a literacy tutor, so it didn't faze me at all. I was very sort of, okay, you're dyslexic, let's work with this. But I think the starting point for me, and I think for anybody who has any kind of difficulty with a disability or anything like that, is to ask the person how it affects them, and how, you know, what effect do they know that it has on their lives. Started from that point with Maria, and asking them what do they do already, how are they coping with those things already, because you're working with somebody who's an adult, they will have got to that point in their lives. They were able to make the application, get the job where you're working. They must have done something to get to that point. So they must have considerable skills and abilities to have been able to do that. When you look at how the effect something like dyslexia can have on someone's life.
Absolutely.
I think it was really important to sort of identify that. I think we were really lucky. Maria was very open about it. She was very trusting, and she also gave me. She'd had a report done on how dyslexia affected her. So gave me that report to read, and that was fascinating. It was really, really interesting to see, because it highlighted the sort of the strengths and weaknesses, and where she was going to struggle, but also the other side where she was going to be really good and positive. And being able to have that report and we sat down. I remember we sat down. I read it, and we sat down in one-to-one supervision session, and we just went through this report and said, I thought it was a bit weird at the beginning of the report. It said something like, Maria seemed quite nervous, and I was thinking, for dyslexia, you're going to be nervous, aren't you? Because you're going to be asked to do things that you don't want to do. So I thought it was, but we went through it, and there were some really key things, and but I think the approach I took, and I was talking to Maria earlier about it. She said I was very kind and supportive, which helped. But I think the approach I took was that it wasn't a problem. That it wasn't going to be a difficulty, but it was a chance to be creative, and it was a chance to look at the sort of processes and the structures around the job, and how we may need to change those or be a bit flexible with them or adapt them to help Maria be able to reach her full potential. Some of those things were really simple, like if you're going to print things out on writing out, can you put it on blue paper? Because could read better on blue paper. Okay, that's straightforward. One of the aspects of the job was part of her role was she had to go into schools to deliver financial well-being courses to parents, and quite often she wouldn't know where the school was. And one of the things that was in the report was that she struggled to read maps and find out where things were. So that was just a case of, okay, let's build this into your job. Why don't the day before or 2 days before go to the school on your way? Amazing. Go to the school so you know where it is, and then when you do have to go, 2 days later, you already been there and you know the routes. Once she'd done a route, it was fine; she could do it.
Wow.
At the time, it might take her a bit longer. So it was making little changes like that.
It's really strange you say that, because I'm just like Maria. I would have had to go to the place to maybe have a look at it a couple of times. And the way I would navigate my way is landmarks. So if there was a massive blue building and that building was knocked down, there's no way I'll find my way around. Now, I think it's really fascinating. I'm wondering how many managers would really have given the opportunity to the individual dyslexic to be able to go out there and have that little bit extra time in finding this place before actually going for that meeting the next day. And is that because, Simon, you think because you grew up with your brother who's dyslexic and you knew how difficult these things are? Or is it because you were just Simon who would generally support people with specific...
I just understood, and I knew that it was going to cause a problem, but I also knew that Maria could do the job very, very well and was very good at delivering the courses and very successful. And so if it meant, that extra half hour or an hour of the day was on the way into work, just, go via this school, come in a bit later that day, that's absolutely fine. As long as, the work was going to get done. And it meant that there wasn't a problem the following day or 2 days later when the course needed to be delivered. So I think that's funny. It's funny you should say about looking at landmarks, because one of the things early on with Maria, she came in and she for lunch, and she had this really nice box of noodles and stuff. And I said, where did you get that from? And she went, I don't know the name of it, but it's white and it's on the road. We all found it though. We found it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the blue building. Yeah, the white building. It's the white building over.
And that's very typical of dyslexia, because normally I'll go somewhere and someone will ask me, I say, I don't know, but it's got a church, it's opposite a church, so you find it. It's all about landmarks rather than reading. So that's really, really phenomenal. It just moves me on to my next question, Simon. What help can other managers give within the workplace to support dyslexics to unlock their full potential? I know you've already given me an example, but most people, and I know for myself, because I went to uni and I got all the software that I needed, whenever I've gone to work somewhere, and a lot of the managers or my senior colleagues will assume that the assistive technology is enough to work with my dyslexia. I don't think so. I don't think assistive technology is just the thing. I think there's more to it than just that. I mean, you've spoken about giving time, extra time to support that person. If any managers watching right now, what sort of advice would you give them to kind of support the individual person with this condition?
I think one of the things that we, so I was talking to Maria earlier, and it was one of the things that I think we forget. Like, there is all the equipment and there's all those things, and they are really useful, and we'll come on to those later. But I think what we need as managers, and as well as just people in general, colleagues, we need to realise the emotional side of dyslexia, because it can make people feel very, very anxious, very stressed out. And if you've had a bad experience, and most people with dyslexia, especially if they're over the age of sort of 35, 40, will have had a bad experience from school, because it won't have been picked up. They'll have just been, they might be, you were talking earlier about people saying, thinking you were dumb, or they will often, words like stupid or you're slow, and those words. And so if you get in a situation when you're in a workplace and you start feeling the pressure, those emotions all come back. And Maria was saying earlier on, that's how she feels. It all comes back, and you can go into like an emotional shutdown. So I think it's important to remember to reduce that anxiety and stress. And so how you approach somebody and how you talk to somebody about it, it needs to be about sharing the problem. One of the things we were talking about was sitting down with the person, actually physically sitting down next to them and working with the person and supporting them through. It might be something like putting information into a database. It might be writing an email, but taking that time to just sit down with the person, just to reassure them, and to make sure that their anxiety levels and their emotion is not coming out there, because it must bring back horrible feelings, I would imagine.
It certainly does.
And it's all of that stuff comes out, and then you've got somebody there pressurizing you to get something done by a certain deadline. Yeah, I can easily see that people shut down in those situations. And I think that's all, as I say, alongside there is all the equipment, there is all the other stuff, giving people time, giving people space, but it is an understanding of that anxiety that people must have. I think that's probably the main thing you need to have in your mind.
Yeah. So a question just popped up. Somebody's asking, why did you find the report fascinating? Is the answer. The question rather. Why did you find Maria's report fascinating?
I think because she it had those sort of really interesting things about how dyslexia affected the person, how it affected her, and what she, so it wasn't just about the negative side. There was good things in there as well. There was stuff about creativity. There was stuff about problem solving. There were very sort of good lateral thinking. So there were other aspects there that were very positive. And it was just fascinating because it enabled me to think, right, now I can see how this role needs to change. And there's certain structures around this role that everybody else does, but we need to change these, and we need to make sure that those things are, we can alter them and adapt them to suit everybody else, and particularly to suit Maria.
And of course, because Maria had her own strengths in a certain way of doing it. I mean, you mentioned earlier, she was a fantastic worker. And, why would you not want to employ someone who's so brilliant? Exactly. It's so brilliant at doing one thing, but just because they're not good at the other, why would you not spend that quality time with them so that you can bring the best out of them and they will feel amazing coming to work? Because I know in the past, it was fear for me to even walk into the building where I was working. I used to go to my doctor and said, you know what, I've got anxiety and stress. I don't think I could go to work today. And I was always off. I was always off work thinking that by the time I go back to the workplace, dyslexia would have disappeared. Well, it doesn't, does it? It gets worse. And I know it really did affect my mental health and my anxiety. And I can't even begin to tell you, Simon, I was always in tears. And I really hope that my ex-manager can watch some of these programs and God, if only, you know, we would have gone that extra mile to have given her the help we needed. Because in the end, where they put me, there's a lot, if you can't deal with the recruitment side of things and all these graphs and charts we need you to do, the report, then we're going to put you in a filing room. Now, that's the worst job you could give a dyslexic. In a, you know, those years ago, I mean, I'm talking about, this was like 2003, 2004. You know, if I'm going to be doing filing, I don't know how best someone with a degree, or I've just come out of uni just to do that. I know I'm capable of doing more, you know. If only I would have, I think every organization needs a Simon, to be honest.
I'm not going to disagree with that, am I?
Definitely, to make it worthwhile, because there's, I mean, 4% of dyslexics are unemployed. And that survey was done in 2012. So we're now in 2020. I don't know if anybody's done any work around that, but it must be a high proportion of dyslexics that are not working at the moment, because I don't think, you know, in the workplace, we're adapting the work to suit their needs or meet them halfway. And it really doesn't cost that much, does it, Simon? I mean, is it a huge cost?
I don't think so. I think some of the stuff, I mean, certainly a lot of the equipment now, there's the Access to Work scheme, the DWP do. I mean, all the support that we got from Maria was paid for through that. And, you know, we got, you know, computer programs, hardware like headsets and things like that, and 2 people to come in, and one to show Maria how to use all the equipment. And the computer programs, and another one to sort of help her with organising her work and time and stuff like that. You know, really, really, what would normally be quite expensive stuff, but all completely, because we were a small charity. I must admit, it depends on the size of your company. We were a small charity, we got it for free.
Yeah, we'll go on to DWP and Access to Work later on in the show. But there's another message here. Did you notice the anxiety that Maria was going through?
Well, it's interesting, because I was talking to her earlier on today, and I didn't. I must admit, at times I didn't see that anxiety. You know, she told me, she found it a lot more difficult than I'd actually realised. But it was just, I think the response. I realised she was struggling, but I didn't realise that she was actually feeling that it's the reason she was struggling was because she was freezing through the anxiety. I hadn't seen that at the time. So I think that's something you sort of, you know, as a manager, I learned a lot working
with Maria.
I think, you know, I picked up a lot about how, again, back to that report, and why it was fascinating was because it gave me a picture to start with. And that was, it was just really interesting to work with somebody and to be able to have that understanding of how they were, you know, how something like dyslexia affects somebody, and how it you've got a sort of a real life model of how it is actually working. So
Right, that's just amazing. So amazing. It just brings me on to the next question. With your experience working with students, because you've taught people with English and literacy, you must have taught certain students with dyslexia at some point, whether they did disclose or didn't disclose. You might have picked it up because of your expertise and how many years you've been teaching. So from your previous workplace, what are the common traits of dyslexics, and what can the workplace do to help? What are some of the common traits that you've noticed working with Maria and other dyslexics you've met, and even your brother? What are some of the traits? I mean, I know, for example, I've met so many dyslexics that will say, "What did you say again? I can't remember your name." What did you say again? And you're constantly asking questions. And I find that when there's 4 or 5 dyslexics in a room, we're all asking the same question. And it's like, we've all forgotten everything you said. And I know, going back into the corporate where I used to work, I was always going back to my manager, I'm sorry, I've forgotten what you want me to do again. And that can be quite frustrating. So what are some of the common traits?
Well, I think that's one of the things that I've noticed is following a conversation or following a thread. And I think that's something that I've noticed, in Maria, but also all the people I used to teach as well. It was quite difficult if you went on too long about something. You had to keep things in short bursts. But again, I think that's so that's important in something like if you're going to have a meeting. If you sit there for an hour and a half, you need breaks, and you sort of put things in chunks and be very clear about when things are beginning and ending. Provide information in advance as much as you can about what the conversations are going to be about, and particularly for people if you know that they need the extra. So anything that was going to be read, try and make sure that goes out early. I mean, it should go out early to everybody anyway, but particularly to people who've got dyslexia. And I think also as well to allow, I used to get annoyed when I was as an employee before I became a manager, when go to a meeting and people would give me something to read and then expect me to comment, and that was it. And as a manager, you've known about that for 2 or 3 months. You've written this paper on it. You've given it out. Why are you expecting me to read it in 10 minutes and then give my opinion? And I just thought that was totally unfair. And so I tried to make sure people had things in advance. And if possible, say, right, read that, take it away. We'll discuss it again next week or in 2 weeks' time. So give people time to actually digest it, and then come back. And then, so then people have got a better idea to talk about it. So things like that. I think breaking things, like I said before, break things up into chunks. You can have like little 10 minutes and then just have a break. Even if it's just stand up and walk around the room, but just have a little break just to keep your mind fresh. And these are all good things to keep a meeting sort of good anyway. I think some of the other stuff that I've picked up is you need to be very clear and straightforward. I mean, I used to have a good laugh at Maria because she could never understand when I was being sarcastic. So I would say something and there'd be a sort of pause, and then she'd go, "You're being sarcastic there, aren't you?" And yes, I was joking. I didn't mean that. I wasn't being serious. And so it's just, understanding there. You need to say, this is what I mean, and this is what I'm saying. And I'm not joking or being sarcastic here. I'm being understanding of things like that. And I've picked up that quite a lot. And I think also there is that sort of, it's almost like a cliche that, people with dyslexia are more creative. I'm not sure that they're creative, but they just tend to look at things from a different angle. And they tend to approach problems or issues or anything, something that's going on. They'll look at it from a slightly different angle. And so they can be very funny because it's something that no one else is expecting. My brother is very funny like that. He'll come out with, an angle that none of us have thought about. And so it's quite amusing. They can be quite creative because they're looking at something in a different way. And so it's just what's normal for that person is different for everybody else. One example I think that I particularly enjoyed working with Maria is we were talking about, our thing is about Made of Money was about delivering financial well-being classes to people on low incomes. And so it's about getting them to understand budgeting and money. And we were sort of getting to how can we introduce the idea of budgeting and the idea that you've got priorities. There are certain things you have to pay, like rent or bills. And we were discussing that. And then Maria just said, well, it's like time. It's like, you have to sleep. That's a priority, what you do with your time. And that's brilliant. That's a fantastic way of looking at it. And then we sort of worked as a team, and we got the comms guy, designer, to come up with this clock. And we came up with this whole activity about where you got people to block out how they spend a day, and then you just reduce the day by 2 hours. So it's getting them to the idea of thinking, well, actually sleep is really important, so I'm not going to change that. Well, sleep is like your rent. Yeah, you can't, you need your 8 hours sleep. You need to pay your rent. Those two things are the same. So budgeting your time is the same as budgeting your money. And even to the point where the words are the same, because we talk about saving money, saving time, spending money, spending time, wasting money, wasting time. And it was just that looking at it from that angle that I thought, that's the kind of thing that they got. And we do that activity and it always goes down really well. People love it. There's nobody gets what it's about when you're doing it. And then there's like a light, well, this is time and money are the same, light bulb moment. And, and people remember it. So it's a really good activity that I don't think I would have come up with myself.
So, I mean,
needed someone to see it from a different angle.
angle. We get lots of phone calls, emails where people have been fired from their jobs. Sometimes when they'll contact us, I would normally ask, is it because you have dyslexia? Did you disclose dyslexia? And in some cases, because a lot of jobs are like, let's say, for example, it's all targeted. So you've got to meet a certain target at a certain time. Now, with my dyslexia and my specific learning difficulties that I have, I can never work at the same pace as someone who's not dyslexic. So sometimes people will contact and say, look, I had to leave my job because the pressure was too much, or I couldn't meet the deadlines just like all the other colleagues. Now, if someone is in that position right now, what would you say to the employer, and what would you also say to the employee? In terms of, I know you've covered some of them already, but I think time is key, isn't it? And one-to-one is key as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's about talking to the person and finding out what they're where they're finding the difficulties and picking what they are. So it might be quite often it will be around things like entering information in a database or having to write something, and the person needing more time to do that. But I think a lot of the technology helps there. This one, I mean, I actually use them now as well myself. These things where you speak into it and it comes up on the page.
Yeah, Dragon.
The brilliant ideas. For ideas when I'm thinking about things and I haven't got time to write them down, but I can just speak them out. So I use those, and I think there's lots of tools that you can use there. I think working with Maria, we had targets. We had very specific deadlines and targets that we had to work for. It was just a case of making sure we were very clear and keeping an eye on those as we were going along and not leaving it too late.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I gave you this figure. I wanted 40, 3 weeks ago, and we've got 2 days left. And well, keep an eye on it as you're going along. Don't just come back in right at the very end and say, oh, you failed.
Well, the worst one for me is if when the managers come up to me and say, well, I want this report and I want it done by 5 p.m. this evening.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I think that's just how I've. To be honest, I can't think of any times where I've had to have things that quickly.
Yeah, because for me it was like, you're not going to get it by 5 p.m. In fact, you're not going to get it till a week's time.
That's just being unreasonable, and especially if the person is not able to do that. I think it's just bullying, to be honest. But
well, in the end, that's how I felt. But I mean, some of the fault was also mine, because I didn't really talk about dyslexia when I first went into the organization. I thought I could cope. I didn't want to be victimized. I didn't want to be picked on. I didn't want anyone looking at me differently. I didn't want the computer screen to be blue. I didn't want my glasses on. I didn't want to stick out like a sore thumb. I wanted to blend in. And in a way, it's my own fault for not speaking about it. However, when I did talk about the condition, it was a bit too late to get the help. And out of frustration and out of shame, I left. And I regret it. But coming from a to I dyslexia angle now, maybe I don't. Maybe it was meant to be that way. And hence why when I'm now running this organization. So Simon, you spoke a little bit about access to work. So tell me how supportive that was for Maria in the workplace.
That was brilliant. And the good thing about it was that Maria had worked somewhere else and had already accessed their services there. So she just came in with this access to work, told me all about it. I looked it all up. It was all fine. Checked that how much it was going to cost us as a charity. Because obviously we're a charity, so I need to keep an eye on the costs and things. Realised that it was going to be completely free because we were below our turnover was less than $1 million. So yeah, great. Go ahead, just get the stuff. We paid for it, and then the DWP just gave us the money back at the end. We sent them the invoices. I mean, we didn't lose any money or a single penny on it. It was great, and I think we got excellent support from Maria. It really helped her to develop into the role and supported her with the role. And I think, as I say, some of the programs that were given, I think they'd be really useful for anybody.
Yeah, and I think a lot of employers think there's a huge cost with access to work. They don't really realize that you have to earn a certain money as an employer. I think, yeah.
If you're fairly small, I can't remember. It's like graded. So the bigger the organisation, obviously they pay more money. But if you're a small charity or a small company, you get free or for 20% of costs or 10% of costs. It just works its way up. I mean, obviously, if you're Barclays Bank, and they can afford it, so they're going to pay the full amount. But most small companies, it'd be free.
But I mean, a company like, for example, a company like Barclays Bank should be able to invest.
Oh, they can afford it. Yeah,
absolutely. And then with your small charity, you can get the help you need. And I just wish that anyone watching right now, please don't. I will use the word don't deal with dyslexia and all your difficulties or learning differences by yourself. Please speak to your line manager. I mean, I know that some people will say, look, I went to speak to my manager and I didn't get the help I need. I don't think you should give up. Keep trying and keep going. After watching this program, there are so many tips you could put forward to your employer and say, well, look, this company did it this way. Why are you not able to support me in that way? And I think that a message is...
That's one of the things that I would say to somebody who's thinking of speaking to their manager about it, or started a new job and wants to raise it. One, be confident. Don't be ashamed about it at all. And I know that can be really difficult, especially if you've had a difficult upbringing and it's a hard thing to raise. It does bring back a lot of those feelings. Be clear about what you want, and be very. I think what helps me as the manager is Maria made it really easy for me. She came in, she said, here's a report. This is how I am. Here's access to work. I can get this support for free. Do you know what I mean? And gave me everything. And I thought, okay, I know now. And it actually, for me as a manager, it wasn't difficult for me at all. I was going to do something. Have a look at the access to work site yourself. Work, the costs, what you're going to need, and how much it is actually going to cost your company or your organization. It could well be free. And just sort of be very clear about what you want and what your skills are and what your strengths are and the areas where you're going to need support and exactly what you need to help you with that support.
I think there's a quick message here. Do you think the charity sector very, very different? It's very different from the corporate sector. I think you've kind of covered that a little bit, haven't you? I've
never really worked in the corporate sector, except I worked in a language school for about 4 years, but and I've worked in shops when I was younger. I would imagine I wouldn't like to say really, because I've never worked in the corporate sector, but you sort of think that people in the charity sector would be more understanding. But I've seen plenty of examples in the charity sector where people have not been very understanding at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. Maybe we'll have another show about that at some point, yeah. So thank you so much for that, Simon. So you've spoken about HR and managers and how they should support, and you've actually kind of touched upon the individual going for that help they need. But the other question that I had for you is that what positive message you have for other dyslexics watching this live show right now and maybe going through difficult times at work? We get emails, we get phone calls, I would say majority of the time, about one, they're on the verge of being dismissed, or they have actually left the job themselves because they couldn't cope. So what message would you give to that particular individual? I know you touched up a little bit on that, and then I think I interrupted you. What advice can you give to the individual dyslexic?
Yeah, what I was saying about the make it easy, make it as easy as you can. It's almost like sort of look at it from your manager's point of view, and see how they're going to see it. If I come to a manager and say, I'm dyslexic, do something about it, that is going to be difficult for them. They've got other things, priorities, lots of things going on. Look at it from their point of view. If you come forward and say, right, there are certain things that I'm going to find a bit difficult in this job. I need these things. You can go here to get them. Here's a report about, my strengths and weaknesses. These are the things that I'm good at. This is what I'm good. And just lay it out and be very clear. I know that's easier for me to say than for somebody to do. But I think that's a starting point. For someone who's really struggling in a job and finding it hard, I would try and find some support. There are organisations out there. I don't know if the British Dyslexia Association could help. But I would try and find maybe somebody to talk to. Try and discuss it if yourselves. I don't know if you offer that service as well, where you support people.
Now,
it's really horrible if you feel that you're on your own. actually, it's just having that someone, because as we talked about before, a lot of it is about the emotions and the anxieties, and I think those are important.
Absolutely. So, Simon, if someone hasn't got the report, then what do? So, I mean, it was great that Maria had the report. If they haven't had the report, do you think most organizations will pay to have that assessment done, or would they not?
I've no idea about that, and I'm not sure. I know they're expensive, because when I was trying to get them done for people at St Mungo's, they were costing £350, £400. The only time we managed to get some done for free was I did some work with London and South Bank University, and they had a dyslexia teaching course. So they were teaching people to be dyslexia teachers, and right at the very end they had to do a proper test. So the test was valid, but it was somebody who trained to be a teacher, and it was fully observed and everything. So they did it properly. We managed to get 3 people testing for nothing there, which was great for them. I think it's really difficult. I mean, I'm not even sure how you could go about it. Maybe try your GP again. Approach the British Dyslexia Association.
It is expensive, and I mean, there is no charity out there that does the assessment for free.
No, it's a disgrace that people pay that amount of money for what could be life-changing experience for them.
Exactly. And this brings me on to saying that I normally say to people, look, if you were going to go on holiday this year or next year and you save that money, invest in yourself. You could use that to go for your dyslexia assessment, because it's your key to success. Imagine if Maria didn't have that report, Simon, it would have been a different ball game, wouldn't it? It means you'd have to find that money to go and support. She'd have to find it, or whichever way around. Now, a lot of people around our age or my age group would not have had that assessment done. And it can be a very lonely place to be. So it was great that Maria had her report, but if she hadn't got it, it would have been quite a different story. I think a message has come up.
I mean, what I would say is again, speak to that person. Talk to I remember years ago, I managed a woman who was bipolar. And so I contacted Mind about that, what support I could give this person. And they said, ask her, she'll know what support she needs. It's exactly the same with Maria. I mean, it was, what support do you need? How can we, I think it's the manager need, as much as the worker needs to come forward and be clear about what they need. A manager needs to go back and say, what support do you need? How can I help you? What changes do we need to make? Because quite often the person will know certain things. As I said right at the beginning, it's about they've got this, they're an adult. They've got to this point in their lives. They will know what works for them and what support they need. There may be new things they can learn, obviously, but they will have certain sort of patterns of working. And we need to adjust the workplace to meet those patterns.
Meet those needs. I 100% agree with you. A message has come through from Marcia. It can feel lonely at work. I used to work late to get the work done. Well, at least she used to work late. I used to take their work home if I could, or I used to be very early in the building to make sure that the work was. And because I work in total silence, I don't like noise around me. I don't like interrupt me. Where the phone goes is a different story, especially when you have to share offices as well. The noise can be so overwhelming. So I used to be in very, very early, when I worked in my other in corporate. So no one was in the office. But it's like, why am I getting to work 2 hours early to get some work done before everybody else comes in? And I think Marcia is saying that she used to obviously stay till very late. So you find most people have left the work and you're still there working. And no one really gets it.
I'm wondering now if because of a lot of us, I'm working from home now, and you are, if a lot of us now are going to switch to working from home, and I think that's something. So chatting to Maria earlier, we were just saying about how she's working from home at the moment and finds it a lot better because there's no noise and distractions around, and so has time. Less anxious, and is able to sort of write an email and then read it again and find the mistakes in it and go back and correct them. Whereas in an office environment, you haven't got the time, or there's too many distractions around. And I think from working at St Mungo's as well, it's when you could get someone in a quiet space, it was much easier than people were quite easily distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. So Simon, we've got like a minute left, and just wanted to say, what would you say, just one word or 2 words, to encourage managers and employers sorry, let me get this right. Employers or employee? The first one could be an employer. What word would you say? Should they hang on in there? You know,
I would say if you're an employer, talk to the person, go and ask them, speak to them, ask them about what's going on and how it affects their lives. And if you're an employee, don't be afraid. You go forward and be clear about what you want, and take your time over it and list out what you need. You know what your strengths are. You know where you need the support, and you know what you're capable of, and just be clear about what you need to be able to do that job.
Absolutely. And if you're a manager?
I'd say, if you're a manager, listen to your staff, go and ask them and say, what support do you need? How can I help you? And then changes.
Wonderful. And that brings us to the end of the show. What a brilliant way to end the show with that particular topic. I'm a manager. How can I support you? Simon, thank you so much for coming on A2I Dyslexia Live Show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Elizabeth. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
It would be great if you could have a book out there talking about tips and bits.
Well, I don't think I'm capable of a book. No.
Well, you never know. If Maria sings praises and other people you've supported have said some amazing things about the work you do, I just want to say thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. And someone just sent a message saying you're fabulous. Or fabulous is the word.
Thank you, Kate.
I'm
sure you're fabulous too.
Thank you, Simon. And I just want to say to our viewers, if you are struggling at work, in the workplace, and you need support with dyslexia-specific learning difficulties, please do get in touch with your line manager or HR. Talk about what the problems are or the issues are. We are there, A2I Dyslexia, if you need help. And again, there's so many organizations out there if you need support in the workplace. I just want to say thank you so much, Simon. Keep up the good work. And I want to say thank you for watching, everybody. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.